He was a tech billionaire nursing a broken heart. She was homeless, invisible to the world. When desperation and revenge collided in a Boston cafe, neither expected what happened next.
Come to this wedding with me. Help me save face at my ex-fiancée's wedding and I'll make it worth your while.
One weekend, one night, that's it.
It was supposed to be fake, a business arrangement to spite his ex. But when a drunken guest exposed her truth to the entire wedding, what she did next left everyone speechless.
Yes, I lost everything. My mother, my home, my voice. But what I haven't lost is my dignity.
This doesn't feel fake to me.
Suddenly, the man who had everything realized he'd found the one thing his money couldn't buy. But can love survive when two broken worlds collide? Will Julian choose his empire or his heart? And will Amaya trust the man who saw her when she was invisible to everyone else? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. The rain poured down on the streets of Boston, soaking through Amaya Lewis's worn jacket. At 26, she'd once been a rising star in the classical music world. Now, she was just another face among the homeless, trying to stay dry. "Just a little longer," she whispered to herself, pulling her scarf higher to protect her throat. Her voice, once her greatest treasure, had been damaged in a bad fall 6 months ago, the final blow after losing her mother to cancer and her apartment to a crooked landlord who disappeared with everyone's security deposits. Amaya spotted a cafe across the street. It looked warm and dry, with golden light spilling onto the wet sidewalk. Maybe she could spare $1 for a cup of coffee. It would buy her an hour of shelter at least. She dashed across the street, dodging puddles, and pushed open the door. The smell of coffee and pastries made her stomach growl. She hadn't eaten since yesterday. "Welcome to Rosie's," a friendly barista called out. "What can I get you?" Amaya fumbled in her pocket for her $1. "Just a small coffee, please." As she waited, the door opened again, bringing in a gust of cold air. A tall man in an expensive coat entered, shaking raindrops from his dark hair. He looked harried, distracted, like someone with too much on his mind. "The usual, Mr. Barrett," the barista asked. "Make it a double, Rosie," he said, his voice tense. "It's going to be a long weekend." The man, Barrett, looked around for a seat. The cafe was crowded because of the rain, but there was an empty chair at Amaya's small table. "Is this seat taken?" he asked. Amaya shook her head, hoping he wouldn't notice how out of place she was. Her clothes were clean. She made sure of that, using public restrooms to wash up, but they were worn and didn't fit quite right. Donations rarely came in her size. "Terrible weather," he said, setting down his coffee. "Yes," Amaya agreed, surprised he was making conversation. He took a sip of his coffee, then looked at her more directly. "I'm Julian Barrett," she hesitated. Amaya Lewis." "Nice to meet you, Amaya Lewis." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. There was something guarded about him, something sad. Julian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and grimaced. "Bad news?" Amaya asked before she could stop herself. "Just a reminder of my weekend plans," he said. "My ex-fiancée is getting married on Saturday." Amaya raised her eyebrows. "And you're going?" "Have to. Small world, big business. Her father's company and mine are working on a project together." Julian sighed. "Everyone's expecting me to show up alone and miserable. The press will have a field day." "The press?" Amaya asked. Julian gave a short laugh. "Local business pages. I made some nay in tech, and suddenly everyone cares who I date." He stared into his coffee. "Maybe I should bring the most unexpected, most unforgettable woman I can find, really give them something to talk about." He said it like a joke, but there was an edge to his voice that suggested he was half serious. Amaya felt a smile tug at her lips. "You don't even know my name." Julian looked up, confused. "You just told me. Amaya Lewis." "I mean, you didn't know it before you sat down. Before you suggested bringing the most unexpected woman you could find." Julian's eyes widened slightly as he realized what she was implying. "I wasn't suggesting. Weren't you?" Amaya challenged, feeling bold for the first time in months. Julian studied her for a moment. "Would you? Come to this wedding with me?" Amaya should have laughed it off, should have said no. Instead, she found herself asking, "Why me?" "Because you're not trying to impress me," Julian said simply. "Everyone else in my life is either scared of me or wants something from me." "What makes you think I don't want something from you? Do you?" Amaya looked down at her nearly empty coffee cup. "A hot meal wouldn't hurt." Julian laughed, a genuine laugh this time. "I can definitely provide that. And a dress for the wedding, hotel room, whatever you need." "I don't need charity," Amaya said quickly. "It's not charity. It is a business arrangement. You help me save face at this wedding, I make it worth your while." Amaya should have been offended. But the truth was, she needed help. And there was something about Julian Barrett that made her think he needed help too, just not the kind money could buy. "One weekend," she said. "One night. That's it." Julian held out his hand. "Deal." When they shook hands, neither of them realized they had just made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Julian sent a car for her the next day. She'd told him she was staying with a friend, too proud to admit she'd been sleeping in a shelter. The driver didn't bat an eye when she came out of the public library instead of an apartment building. The car took her to a hotel, where Julian had booked a room for her to get ready. In the room, she found 3 dress options laid out on the bed, all in her size, along with shoes and a note that said, "Hair and makeup will arrive at 2 p.m. Call the front desk if you need anything. J." Amaya's hands trembled as she touched the dresses. They were beautiful, expensive. She hadn't worn anything so nice in years. She chose the simplest one, a deep blue that reminded her of the gowns she used to wear for performances. When the hair and makeup team arrived, they treated her like a celebrity. Never once questioning who she was or why Julian Barrett was sending her to a high society wedding. By the time Julian knocked on her door at 5 p.m., Amaya barely recognized herself in the mirror. Her dark hair was swept up in an elegant style, her makeup subtle but flattering. The dress fit perfectly, making her look like she belonged in Julian's world. When she opened the door, Julian stared at her in undisguised surprise. "Is it too much?" Amaya asked, suddenly self-conscious. "No," Julian said quickly. "You look okay. Perfect. Ready to make everyone wonder who you are?" Amaya took a deep breath. "Ready." The wedding was held at the Fairmont Copley Plaza, one of Boston's most luxurious hotels. As Julian and Amaya walked into the reception, heads turned. Whispers followed them across the room. "Who is she? Where did he find her? I've never seen her before." Julian placed his hand lightly on the small of her back, guiding her through the crowd. "Ignore them," he murmured. "Julian." A middle-aged woman in an expensive suit approached them. "We didn't think you'd come." "Wouldn't miss it, Margaret," Julian said smoothly. "This is Amaya Lewis. Amaya, this is Margaret Chen, my company's head of public relations." "Pleased to meet you," Amaya said, shaking the woman's hand. Margaret looked Amaya up and down, her smile not reaching her eyes. "I don't believe Julian's mentioned you before." "That's because Julian likes to keep his private life private," Amaya replied, matching Margaret's tone perfectly. Julian's lips twitched with suppressed amusement. "Well," Margaret said, "I'm sure everyone will be eager to learn more about you, especially Vanessa." "Vanessa?" Amaya asked. "The bride," Julian explained. "My ex." As if summoned by her name, a stunning woman in a white dress appeared beside them, holding the arm of a handsome man in a tuxedo. "Julian," the bride said, her voice honey-sweet but her eyes cold. "You made it." "Congratulations, Vanessa," Julian said. "James." He nodded at the groom, who looked uncomfortable. Vanessa's gaze shifted to Amaya. "And who's this?" "Amaya Lewis," Julian said, putting his arm around Amaya's waist. "My date." Vanessa's perfect smile faltered for just a second. "How nice. Where did you two meet?" Before Julian could answer, Amaya said, "At a cafe, during the rainstorm yesterday." Vanessa and Margaret exchanged looks of disbelief. "Yesterday," Vanessa repeated. "Sometimes you just know," Amaya said, looking up at Julian with practiced adoration. Julian played along, his eyes softening as he looked at her. "You certainly do." Vanessa's smile became tight. "Well, Enjoy the reception. If you'll excuse us, we need to greet our other guests. As soon as Vanessa and her new husband walked away, Margaret leaned in. Julian, what are you thin? King, the board meeting is on Monday and you show up with a complete stranger. Do you know what people will say? I don't care what people say, Julian replied. Margaret's expression hardened. You should. You're still recovering from the PR disaster when Vanessa left you for James. The company stock dropped 5 points. And it recovered, Julian pointed out. Besides, isn't it better if I look like I've moved on? Margaret glanced at Amaya. We know nothing about her. I know everything I need to know, Julian said firmly. Now if you'll excuse us, I'd like to dance with my date. He led Amaya to the dance floor, leaving Margaret staring after them. Sorry about that, he said as he took Amaya in his arms. Margaret's job is to worry about appearances. And am I bad for appearances? Amaya asked. Julian looked down at her, his expression softening. You're the most real thing in this room. Amaya felt her heart skip a beat. She reminded herself that this was just an arrangement. One night. Nothing more. But as Julian held her close, moving smoothly to the music, she couldn't help wishing things were different. That she wasn't homeless and broken, that they had met under normal circumstances. Everyone's watching us, Julian whispered. Good, Amaya replied. That was the plan, right? Right, Julian agreed, but there was a question in his eyes. As Tahei danced, Amaya saw Vanessa watching them from across the room, her perfect features marred by a frown. Your ex-fiancée doesn't look happy, Amaya observed. Vanessa doesn't like surprises she can't control, Julian said. She left me for James 6 months ago, but she still expected me to pine for her. Why did she leave? Julian's expression darkened. She said I changed after my brother died, that I was too focused on work, too closed off. I'm sorry about your brother, Amaya said softly. Tom committed suicide 2 years ago, Julian said, his voice flat. I missed the signs. I was too busy building my company. That's not your fault, Amaya said. Julian shook his head. You don't know that. I know what it's like to blame yourself for things you couldn't control, Amaya replied. After my mum died, I kept thinking of all the things I should have done differently, but it wouldn't have changed anything. Julian looked at her with new interest. What happened to your mum? Cancer, Amaya said simply. I quit school to take care of her. After she died, I tried to go back to singing, but then I lost my apartment and then my voice. She stopped, not wanting to reveal too much. What happened to your voice? Julian asked gently. Amaya hesitated. I fell, damaged my vocal cords. The doctor said they could be fixed with surgery, but... She shrugged. No health insurance. Julian opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, the music ended, and the DJ announced it was time for the bride and groom's first dance as husband and wife. They moved off the dance floor, finding a table near the back of the room. So you were a singer? Julian asked, picking up their conversation. Classical, Amaya nodded. Nothing famous. Local symphony, small venues. But it was everything to me. You could sing again, double you with the right medical care, Julian suggested. Amaya shook her head. That's not why I'm here, Julian. I don't want your money. Then why are you here? He asked. Amaya looked around at the glittering reception, the wealthy guests in their designer clothes. I guess I wanted to remember what it felt like to be part of the world again, even if it's just for one night. Julian's expression softened. Amaya. Julian Barrett, a loud voice interrupted. A red-faced man in an expensive suit approached their table, wobbling slightly. Didn't expect to see you here after Vanessa humiliated you. Hello, Richard, Julian said coolly. I see you found the bar. And you found yourself a new girl, Richard slurred, looking Amaya up and down. Where'd you find this one? She looks familiar. Amaya tensed. Had he recognized her from her singing days, or worse, from the streets? Richard, you're drunk, Julian said, standing up. Go sleep it off. But Richard was squinting at Amaya now. I know you. You're that homeless woman who hangs around the public library. I've seen you begging outside my office building. A hush fell over the nearby tables. Amaya felt her face burn with shame. That's enough, Richard, Julian said. his voice dangerously low. "You brought a homeless person to Vanessa's wedding?" Richard laughed loudly. "What, did you pay her to pretend to be your date?" Amaya stood up, her hands shaking but her head high. "Yes," she said clearly, "I lost everything. My mother, my home, my voice. But what I haven't lost is my dignity." The room had gone completely silent now. Everyone was watching. "I was never ashamed of who I am," Amaya continued, looking around at the shocked faces. "Only of how easily people like you forget you're not better, just luckier." For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then, somewhere in the back of the room, someone began to clap. Then another person joined in, and another. Julian looked at Amaya with astonishment and something else. Admiration, pride. Richard, faced with the unexpected reaction, backed away, muttering under his breath. "I think we should leave," Amaya whispered to Julian. He nodded, taking her hand. "Let's go." As they walked out, heads held high, the applause followed them, and Vanessa, standing frozen beside her new husband, watched them go with undisguised envy in her eyes. Outside in the cool night air, Amaya finally let out the breath she'd been holding. "I'm sorry I ruined your plan." "No," Julian said, turning to face her. "You didn't ruin anything. You were amazing in there. But now everyone knows the truth, that I'm homeless, that this was all fake." Julian reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "This doesn't feel fake to me." Before Amaya could respond, a hotel staff member hurried out after them. Mr. Barrett, your car is ready." Julian thanked him, then turned back to Amaya. "Let me take you somewhere. Anywhere you want to go." Amaya hesitated. The night was supposed to be over, the deal complete. But when she looked into Julian's eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. "Okay," she said softly. "Let's go." Julian's driver took them to a quiet restaurant overlooking the Boston Harbor. Despite the late hour, the staff welcomed them immediately, leading them to a private table with a view of the water. "I come here when I need to think," Julian explained as they sat down. "The owner is an old friend." Amaya looked around at the elegant but comfortable space. "It's beautiful." A waiter appeared with menus, but Julian waved them away. "Just bring us whatever Chef Mike recommends tonight, and some that Italian red wine he's been saving." When they were alone again, Amaya said, "You didn't have to bring me here. Our deal is done." "Maybe I'm not ready for the night to end," Julian replied. "Unless you want to go?" Amaya thought about the shelter, the lumpy cot waiting for her if she got there before they locked the doors. "No," she admitted. "I don't want to go." "Then stay," Julian said simply. Their first course arrived, a delicate seafood appetizer. That made Amaya close her eyes in pleasure when she tasted it. "When was the last time you had a real meal?" Julian asked. Amaya set down her fork. "You don't want to know." "I do," Julian insisted. "I want to know everything about you." "Why?" Amaya challenged. "So you can feel better about helping the poor homeless woman." Julian looked hurt. "That's not fair." Amaya sighed. "You're right. I'm sorry. It's just... This isn't easy for me. A few days ago, I was invisible. People walked right past me like I didn't exist. Now I'm sitting in a fancy restaurant with a millionaire who took me to his ex's wedding. Technically, you were the one who suggested it," Julian reminded her with a smile. "I was joking." "So was I." At first, Julian's expression became serious. "But I'm glad you said yes." Their main course arrived, perfectly cooked steaks with roasted vegetables. Amaya tried to eat slowly to savor each bite, but she was so hungry. "You said you damaged your vocal cords," Julian said after they'd eaten in silence for a few minutes. "What exactly happened?" Amaya took a sip of wine. "I was staying at a women's shelter after I lost my apartment. One night a woman there had a seizure. I ran to get help, but it was dark, and I fell down a flight of stairs, hit my throat on the railing on the way down." She touched her neck absently. "The shelter called an ambulance, but I couldn't afford to stay in the hospital. The doctor said I needed surgery to repair the damage, but..." She shrugged. "But you couldn't afford it," Julian finished. "Right. So I lost my voice, which meant I lost my singing jobs. And without that income, I couldn't get a new apartment. Amaya looked out at the harbor. One thing leads to another, and suddenly you're homeless. What about friends, family? My mom was all I had. After she died, Amaya swallowed hard. I put everything into taking care of her, drained my savings, stopped keeping in touch with friends. You know how it is. People get busy with their own lives. They don't notice when you disappear. Julian nodded. After my brother died, I threw myself into work, pushed everyone away, including Vanessa. He twisted his wine glass. She was right to leave me. That doesn't mean it didn't hurt, Amaya said gently. No, it hurt like hell. Julian looked at her directly. But tonight, for the first time since it happened, I didn't feel that pain. Because of you. Amaya felt her cheeks warm. I didn't do anything special. You stood up to that entire room of judgmental, wealthy people. You showed more strength and dignity than any of them. Julian leaned forward. Do you know how rare that is? To meet someone real in my world? The intensity of his gaze made Amaya look away. You don't know me, Julian. I want to, he said simply. Before she could respond, a middle-aged man in chef's whites approached their table. Julian, I was told you were here. How was the meal? Perfect as always, Mike. Julian stood to shake the chef's hand. This is Amaya Lewis. Amaya, this is Mike Russo, the owner and chef. A pleasure to meet you, Mike said, shaking Amaya's hand. Any friend of Julian's is welcome here any time. Thank you for the wonderful food, Amaya said. It was the best meal I've had in, well, a very long time. Mike beamed. Music to a chef's ears. Will you two be staying for dessert? Julian looked at Amaya questioningly. Definitely, she said, making both men smile. After Mike left to prepare their dessert personally, Julian said, You know I could help you with your voice. Amaya stiffened. I told you I don't want your charity. It's not charity, Julian argued. It's an investment. In what? In you. In your talent. Julian leaned forward. I have connections at Massachusetts General, the best throat specialists in the country. They could fix your vocal cords. Amaya shook her head. Even if I agreed, which I haven't, what then? I still have nowhere to live, no clothes, no way to get back on my feet. I have a guest house, Julian said. You could stay there while you recover from the surgery, and I know people at the New England Conservatory. Once your voice is healed, you could teach there. You've got it all figured out, haven't you? Amaya said, a hint of anger in her voice. Just swoop in and fix my broken life? Julian looked taken aback. I'm just trying to help. Well, maybe I don't want your help. Amaya stood up suddenly. Maybe I don't want to be your good deed for the year. Amaya, that's not what this is about. Isn't it? She grabbed at her purse, a small loaner that had come with the dress. Thank you for dinner, Julian, and for the experience. But I think it's time for me to go. Where will you go? Julian asked, standing too. That's not your problem. Please, just wait, Julian said, reaching for her hand. I'm sorry if I offended you. That wasn't my intention. Amaya looked at his hand on hers. I know, she said more softly, but you don't understand what it's like to lose everything, to have people look at you like you're nothing. You're right, I don't, Julian admitted, but I do know what it's like to lose someone you love, to blame yourself, to feel like you're just going through the motions of living. Their eyes met, and Amaya saw the genuine pain in his. She sat back down slowly. I'm not trying to fix you, Julian said. I want to help. No strings attached. There are always strings, Amaya replied. Not his time, Julian promised. You can say no. You can walk away right now and I'll respect that, but please just think about it. Before Amaya could answer, Mike returned with 2 plates of tiramisu. The house specialty, he said proudly, setting them down. It looks amazing, Amaya said, grateful for the interruption. After Mike left, they ate their dessert in silence, both lost in thought. Finally, Julian spoke. Let me at least get you a hotel room for our tonight. No expectations, just a safe place to sleep. Amaya hesitated, then nodded. Okay, just for tonight. The hotel room was in the same luxury hotel where she'd gotten ready for the wedding. When they arrived, Julian walked her to the door but didn't come in. "I'll have the front desk hold the room for you for a week," he said. "That should give you time to think about what you want to do next." "Julian, I can't accept." "Please," he interrupted. "Just take some time to consider my offer. That's all I'm asking." Amaya looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, I'll think about it." "Good." Julian smiled. "There's a card with my number on the desk. Call me when you decide, or if you need anything at all." "Thank you," Amaya said softly. "For everything." Julian looked like he wanted to say more, but instead, he just nodded and turned to go. "Julian," Amaya called after him. He looked back. "Kay. Why are you doing this, really?" Julian considered the question. "Because when I'm with you, the noise in my head stops. For the first time since Tom died, I feel present." With that, he walked away, leaving Amaya standing in the doorway, watching him go. The next morning, Amaya woke up in the softest bed she'd slept in for months. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then it all came flooding back: the wedding, the confrontation, the dinner with Julian. She got up and went to the window, looking out at the Boston skyline. The city looked different from up here, less threatening. She thought about Julian's offer: surgery to fix her voice, a place to stay while she recovered, a chance to teach music again. It was too good to be true. People like Julian didn't just help people like her without wanting something in return. Did they? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. When she opened it, a Hotel staff member stood there with a garment bag. "Ms. Lewis, Mr. Barrett sent these for you." Amaya took the bag, thanked the staff member, and closed the door. Inside the bag were several simple but elegant outfits, all in her size, along with a note: "In case you need something to wear. No pressure. J." Amaya sat on the bed holding the note. It would be so easy to accept his help, to let him fix her problems. But what would that make her? And what would happen when he inevitably got bored and moved on to the next charity case? She put the clothes back in the bag. She needed time to think. After showering and putting on the hotel robe, Amaya ordered room service. Just toast and coffee, the cheapest things on the menu. She couldn't help feeling guilty about Julian paying for everything. As she ate, she turned on the TV and was shocked to see Julian's face on a local news channel. The headline scrolled across the bottom of the screen: "Tech billionaire Julian Barrett creates scene at ex's wedding with mystery woman." The reporter's voice was excited. Sources say Barrett brought a homeless woman as his date to Vanessa Mitchell's wedding to James Westfield last night. The woman, identified as former singer Amaya Lewis, reportedly stood up to wedding guests who tried to shame her, earning applause from the crowd. Barrett and Lewis left the reception early, where saw the witnesses saying they looked very cozy. A photo of Amaya and Julian dancing appeared on the screen. Amaya nearly choked on her toast. How had they gotten that picture? And how did they know who she was? Her phone, the prepaid one she kept for emergencies, rang. It was Julian. "Have you seen the news?" he asked without preamble. "Just now," Amaya said. "How did they get that picture?" "Someone at the wedding sold it, probably," Julian sighed. "I'm sorry about this. My PR team is trying to contain it." "Contain me, you mean?" Amaya said. "No, that's not." Julian stopped. "Can I come see you?" "It's better if we talk in person." Amaya hesitated. "I don't know, Julian." "Please," he said. "I promise I'm not trying to control you or the situation. I just want to make sure you're okay." After a moment, Amaya agreed. "Fine, but I'm not promising anything." 30 minutes later, Julian arrived at her hotel room. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept. "I really am sorry about the news," he said as soon as she let him in. "This is exactly what I was trying to avoid by bringing a date to the wedding in the first place. The media loves a story about poor, rejected Julian Barrett." "Well, now they have an even better story," Amaya pointed out. "Rich guy brings homeless woman to ex's wedding. It's like a movie plot." Julian ran a hand through his hair. My PR team wants to release a statement saying you're an old friend who's fallen on hard times and I was helping you out. Is that what I am? An old friend? Amaya asked. No, Julian admitted, but they're worried about how this looks. For your business, you mean? Yes. Julian looked uncomfortable. The board meeting is tomorrow. They're already calling, asking questions. Tell them the truth, Amaya said. You brought a homeless woman to your ex's wedding to make her jealous. It's not that complicated. That's not why I brought you, Julian protested. No? Then why did you? Julian looked at her for a long moment. Because when I saw you in that cafe, you weren't looking at me like I was Julian Barrett, tech billionaire. You were just seeing a person. Do you know how rare that is for me? Amaya softened slightly. So, what do you want to do about the news? I don't care what they say about me, Julian said. I'm worried about you. Once they find out who you are, they'll dig into your past, your family, everything. I don't have much to hide, Amaya shrugged. Daughter takes care of dying mother, loses everything, ends up homeless. It's sad, but it's not exactly scandalous. You shouldn't have to deal with this, Julian said, not on top of everything else. I'll be fine, Amaya assured him. Besides, in a day or two, they'll move on to the next story. Julian didn't look convinced. What if... He hesitated. What if we give them a different story? What do you mean? What if, instead of denying anything, we lean into it, say that we met recently and hit it off? You want to pretend we're dating? Amaya asked incredulously. Not exactly, Julian said. Just that we're friends. And yes, I'm helping you get back on your feet, but not out of pity or as a publicity stunt, because I believe in you and your talent. And the board would believe that? Some of them know about my brother, Julian said quietly. How I blamed myself. They might understand why I'd want to help someone else who's struggling. Amaya considered this. So I agree to your surgery offer, move into your guest house, and we tell everyone it's because you believe in my musical talent. Only if you want to, Julian said quickly. The offer stands regardless of what we tell the press. Amaya walked to the window thinking, and what happens when my voice is fixed? When I don't need your help anymore? That's up to you, Julian said. You can go back to singing or teaching or whatever you want to do. No strings attached. Amaya turned to face him. Why do I feel like there are strings even if you don't see them? Julian stepped closer. What do you mean? I mean, what happens if I start to have feelings for you, or you for me? What then? Julian looked surprised by her directness. I don't know. Exactly, Amaya said. This isn't just about surgery or a place to stay. There's something happening between us, and pretending there isn't won't make it go away. Julian was silent for a moment. You're right, he finally said. I felt it the moment I saw you in that cafe, but I would never take advantage of that or of your situation. I know, Amaya said softly. That's why I'm going to say yes. Yes to what? Julian asked. To all of it. The surgery, the guest house, even the story for the press. Amaya took a deep breath. But I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this because I need rescuing. I'm doing it because I want my life back, my voice, my music. Julian smiled, relief and something else, happiness, spreading across his face. That's all I want for you too. And one more thing, Amaya added. When I'm back on my feet, I pay you back, every penny. Julian started to protest, but the look on Amaya's face stopped him. All right, he agreed. Deal. They shook hands but held on a moment longer than necessary, both aware that this was more than just a business arrangement now. 3 days later, Amaya moved into Julian's guest house, a charming cottage on his estate overlooking the ocean north of Boston. The media attention had mostly died down, thanks to Julian's PR team releasing a statement that matched the story they'd agreed on. There were still occasional paparazzi photos of them together, but nothing too invasive. Julian had arranged for Dr. Eleanor Chen, one of the top throat specialists in the country, to examine Amaya. After a thorough evaluation, Dr. Chen confirmed that surgery could repair the damage to her vocal cords. It won't be easy, Dr. Chen warned. The surgery is just the first step. There will be weeks of silence afterward, then months of vocal therapy. I'll do whatever it takes, Amaya said firmly. The surgery was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, Amaya settled into the guest house, trying to get used to having a real home again. Julian gave her space, busy with his company during the day, but they had dinner together most evenings, getting to know each other better. One night, as they sat on the terrace watching the sunset, Julian asked, "Are you nervous about the surgery?" "Terrified," Amaya admitted. "What if it doesn't work? What if I never sing again?" "Dr. Chen is the best," Julian reassured her. "But even if it doesn't work perfectly, you'll still have a place here for as long as you need." Amaya looked at him. "Why are you so good to me?" Julian considered the question. "When my brother died, I shut down. I stopped feeling anything. Work was all I had. Then I met you, and suddenly I was feeling things again. Anger at how people treated you, admiration for your strength, and something else I can't quite name yet." "I know the feeling," Amaya said softly. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the last rays of sun disappear below the horizon. Amaya thought about how much her life had changed in just a week, from homeless and hopeless to sitting on a millionaire's terrace about to get surgery that could give her back her voice. It seemed too good to be true. And in Amaya's experience, things that seemed too good to be true usually were. But as she glanced at Julian's profile in the fading light, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. The day of the surgery arrived. Julian drove Amaya to the hospital himself, despite his assistant's protests about his packed schedule. "You don't have to stay," Amaya told him, as a nurse prepared her for the procedure. "I know you have meetings." "They can wait," Julian said, holding her hand. "This is more important." Amaya felt tears prick her eyes. "Julian, Ms. Lewis?" Dr. Chen entered the room. "Are you ready?" Amaya nodded, suddenly unable to speak. "The procedure should take about 3 hours," Dr. Chen explained to Julian. "She'll be in recovery for another 2 after that." "I'll be here," Julian promised. As they wheeled Amaya toward the operating room M, she kept her eyes on Julian until the doors closed between them. She was putting her future in Dr. Chen's hands and her trust in Julian's. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The last thing she thought before the anesthesia took effect was that no matter what happened with her voice, her life would never be the same again. And for the first time in a long time, that thought didn't scare her. It gave her hope. Amaya woke up slowly, her throat burning with pain. For a moment she panicked, not recognizing her surroundings. Then she remembered. The surgery, Dr. Chen, Julian. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. A hand squeezed hers gently. "Don't try to talk," Julian said, leaning into her field of vision. "The surgery went well, but you need to rest your voice completely for 2 weeks." Amaya nodded slightly, relief washing over her. Julian looked tired, his hair rumpled and his shirt wrinkled, like he'd been sitting by her bed for hours. A nurse came in to check Amaya's vitals. "Good to see you awake, Ms. Lewis. Dr. Chen will be in shortly to discuss your recovery plan." Julian stepped back to allow the nurse to work, but he didn't leave the room. Amaya found his presence comforting. It had been a long time since anyone had stayed by her side in a hospital. Dr. Chen arrived a few minutes later, smiling when she saw Amaya awake. "The surgery went very well," she said. "We were able to repair all the damage to your vocal cords." Amaya reached for the notepad and pen beside her bed. "When can I sing again?" she wrote. "Not for at least 2 months," Dr. Chen said firmly. "And even then, only with supervision from a vocal therapist. Recovery is a process, Amaya. You can't rush it." Amaya wrote another question. "Will my voice be the same?" Dr. Chen's expression turned serious. "I can't promise that. Your voice might be different after the surgery and rehabilitation, but with proper therapy, you should be able to sing again." It wasn't the guarantee Amaya had hoped for, but it was more hope than she'd had in months. She wrote a simple thank you on the pad. "We'll keep you overnight for observation," Dr. Chen continued, "but you should be able to go home tomorrow if all goes well." After Dr. Chen left, Julian pulled his chair closer to Amaya's bed. "See? Everything's going to be fine," Amaya wrote on her pad. "You didn't have to stay all this time." "I wanted to," Julian replied simply. Their eyes met, and Amaya felt that now familiar flutter in her chest. She quickly looked away, writing, "What about your meetings?" "Rescheduled," Julian said with a shrug. "Some things are more important." Amaya wanted to ask what he meant by that, but she was too tired to write more. Instead, she just squeezed his hand in thanks. "Get some rest," Julian said softly. "I'll be here when you wake up." Amaya closed her eyes, feeling safer than she had in a very long time. True to his word, Julian was there when Amaya woke up the next morning, and he drove her back to the guest house himself. He had arranged for a private nurse to stay with her for the first few days, to help with her recovery and ensure she didn't strain her voice. "I know you're independent," Julian said, when Amaya looked skeptical about the nurse. "But please, just for a few days, it would make me feel better." Amaya reluctantly agreed. The nurse, a kind middle-aged woman named Gloria, turned out to be a blessing. She helped Amaya with her medication, prepared soft foods that wouldn't irritate her throat, and even taught her some basic sign language to make communication easier. Julian visited every evening after work, bringing books or movies to keep Amaya entertained. They developed a routine, dinner together, usually followed by a game of chess or watching a classic film. Amaya wrote notes on her pad to communicate, and Julian never seemed to mind the slower pace of their conversations. One evening, about a week after the surgery, Julian arrived looking troubled. "Is everything okay?" Amaya wrote. Julian hesitated, then sighed. "The board is questioning my judgment about you." Amaya stifled. "Because I'm homeless?" "Former homeless," Julian corrected. "And no, not exactly. They're concerned that I'm emotionally involved, that it might affect the company." Amaya felt her chest tighten. "Are you emotionally involved?" Julian looked at her directly. "Yes, I am." The simple admission hung in the air between them. Amaya didn't know how to respond. Part of her wanted to run away from these feelings, to protect herself from inevitable disappointment. But another part, a part she thought had died along with her mother, wanted to embrace this chance at happiness. "What do they want you to do?" she finally wrote. "They want me to distance myself from you publicly," Julian said, "to make it clear that you're just a friend I'm helping, nothing more." "And what do you want?" Amaya wrote, her hand trembling slightly. Julian reached across the table and took her hand. "I want to be honest, about how I feel, about what's happening between us." Amaya pulled her hand away to write, "What is happening between us, Julian?" "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know I've never felt this way about anyone, not even Vanessa." Amaya closed her eyes, overwhelmed. This was moving too fast. She needed time to think, to process everything. "I frightened you," Julian said, reading her expression. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to push." Amaya quickly wrote, "Not fright, Enid, just, it's a lot. I need time." "Of course," Julian nodded. "Take all the time you need." He stood up to leave, but Amaya caught his hand. She wrote one more note. "I feel it too, but I'm scared." Julian's expression softened. "We'll figure it out together. I promise." After he left, Amaya sat alone in the guest house, thinking about how much her life had changed in such a short time. Just weeks ago, she'd been sleeping in shelters, invisible to the E-world. Now she had a roof over her head, medical care, and a man who looked at her like she was something precious. It terrified her, because the higher you climb, the farther you have to fall. 2 weeks after the surgery, Dr. Chen gave Amaya permission to begin speaking again, very gently, just a few minutes a day at first. Her first words were to Julian. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice raspy but audible. Julian's face lit up at the sound. "You're welcome," he said softly. "It's good to hear your voice again." Over the next few weeks, Amaya worked with a vocal therapist named Marcus, slowly rebuilding her strength and control. The therapy was grueling, exercises that seemed simple but left her exhausted, scales that revealed the weaknesses in her newly repaired vocal cords. "It's like learning to walk again," she told Julian one evening, her voice still rough, but growing stronger each day. "You're marking amazing progress," Julian encouraged her. "Marcus says you're one of his most dedicated patients. I have a lot of motivation, Amaya said, and a lot to prove. You don't have to prove anything to me, Julian replied. Not to you, Amaya shook her head. To myself. Julian understood. In the weeks since the surgery, he'd come to admire Amaya's fierce independence. She accepted his help, but she never took it for granted. Every day she worked harder than the day before, determined to reclaim her voice and her life. 1 month after the surgery, Julian invited Amaya to attend a charity gala with him. It's for the music education program I support, he explained. I thought you might be interested since you mentioned wanting to teach again someday. Amaya hesitated. I don't know, Julian. The last time we went to an event together, it didn't exactly go smoothly. This will be different, Julian promised. These are good people doing important work, and... He paused. I'd like them to meet you, the real you. Why? Amaya asked. Because I'm proud of you, Julian said simply. And because I think you might be perfect for a position they're creating, teaching voice to underprivileged kids. Amaya's eyes widened. You didn't. I didn't what? Create a job for me, Amaya said, her voice rising slightly. Tell me you didn't do that. Julian looked genuinely confused. I didn't. The position has been in the works for months. I'm on the board of the foundation, yes, but this was planned long before I met you. Amaya studied his face, looking for any sign that he was lying. She saw none. I'm sorry, she said. I just don't want special treatment. It wouldn't be, Julian assured her. You'd have to apply like anyone else. I just thought, with your background in classical voice and your personal experience with hardship, you might be perfect for it. Amaya considered this. Teaching music again, helping kids who might otherwise never get the chance to develop their talents. It was exactly what she wanted to do. Okay, she agreed. I'll go to the gala, but I'm not promising anything about the job. Julian smiled. That's all I ask. The night of the gala arrived. Julian had offered to buy Amaya a new dress, but she insisted on wearing one of the simpler UT fits he'd given her after the wedding. She didn't want to feel like she was playing dress-up again. As they entered the elegant hotel ballroom, Amaya felt nervous but determined. This time she wasn't pretending to be someone she wasn't. She was just Amaya Lewis, former singer, currently recovering her voice and her life. Julian, so glad you could make it. A distinguished older woman approached them, her smile warm and genuine. And this must be Amaya. I've heard so much about you. Amaya, this is Elizabeth Morgan, Julian introduced them. She's the director of the foundation. It's a pleasure to meet you, Amaya said, her voice still slightly rough but clear enough. The pleasure is mine, Elizabeth replied. Julian tells me you were a classical singer before your accident. Yes, Amaya nodded. I performed with the Boston Civic Symphony and taught private lessons. We should talk about our New You, the program, Elizabeth said. Julian mentioned you might be interested. I'd like that, Amaya smiled. As Elizabeth excused herself to greet other guests, Julian guided Amaya further into the room. See, not so bad. So far, Amaya agreed cautiously. They mingled with the other guests, most of whom were friendly and welcoming. A few gave Amaya curious looks. Clearly they'd read the tabloid stories about her and Julian, but no one was openly hostile. During dinner, Amaya found herself seated next to a music teacher from a local high school. They fell into an easy conversation about teaching techniques and the challenges of engaging students. You really know your stuff, the teacher Susan said admiringly. Have you thought about getting back into teaching? Actually, I'm considering applying for the youth program position with the foundation, Amaya admitted. You'd be perfect for it, Susan said. Those kids need someone who understands what they're going through. Someone who can show them that music isn't just for people with money and privilege. Amaya felt a surge of confidence. Maybe she could do this. Maybe she could rebuild her life, not just as Julian's charity case, but as a professional in her own right. After dinner, there was a short program featuring young musicians who had benefited from the foundation's work. Amaya watched, deeply moved, as children from disadvantaged backgrounds performed with skill and passion. This is what it's all about, Julian whispered to her. Giving kids a chance to find their voice. Amaya nodded, too emotional to speak. She thought about her own journey, how music had been her salvation through difficult times. She wanted to offer that same lifeline to others. When the performances ended, Elizabeth Morgan took the stage to thank everyone for their support. "And now," she said, "I'd like to invite a special guest to say a few words. Julian Barrett has been one of our most generous supporters, not just with his money, but with his time and vision." The audience applauded as Julian made his way to the stage. He smiled at Amaya as he passed her table. "Thank you, Elizabeth," Julian began. "As many of you know, music education changed my life. My brother Tom and I both studied piano as children. For me, it was just to know their activity. For Tom, it was a lifeline during his struggles with depression." The room grew quiet. Julian rarely spoke publicly about his brother. "After Tom's death," Julian continued, "I promised myself I would do everything I could to make sure other young people had access to the healing power of music. That's why this foundation means so much to me." Julian paused, his eyes finding Amaya in the crowd. "Recently, I've been reminded of music's transformative power through someone very special. Someone who lost everything, her mother, her home, even her voice, but never lost her dignity or her determination." Amaya felt tears prick her eyes as Julian spoke about her without naming her. "Her journey has inspired me," Julian said, "and it's reminded me why this work matters. Because talent and passion don't belong only to those with money and privilege, they belong to everyone. And it's our responsibility to make sure everyone has the chance to develop their gifts." The audience applauded warmly as Julian finished his speech. When he returned to their table, Amaya squeezed his hand, too moved to speak. Later, as they mingled during the dessert reception, Elizabeth Morgan approached Amaya again. "Julian's speech was quite moving," she said, "and I don't think it's a secret who inspired it." Amaya blushed. "He's been very kind to me." "Julian doesn't do anything out of mere kindness," Elizabeth said shrewdly. "He's a businessman, even in his philanthropy. If he believes in you, it's because he sees something worth believing in." Before Amaya could respond, they were interrupted by a familiar voice. "Well, isn't this cozy?" Vanessa Mitchell said, appearing beside them with a champagne flute in hand. She looked stunning in a designer gown, her new wedding ring glittering on her finger. "Vanessa," Elizabeth nodded coolly, "I didn't realize you would be attending tonight." "James is a major donor," Vanessa explained, her eyes fixed on Amaya. "We wouldn't miss it." She smiled thinly. "Amaya, isn't it? I believe we met at my wedding." "Yes," Amaya said, keeping her voice steady. "Congratulations again." "Thank you," Vanessa said, though her tone suggested anything but gratitude. "I see Julian is still helping you." "Ms. Lewis and I were just discussing her potential role with our youth program," Elizabeth interjected smoothly. Her background in classical voice would be a tremendous asset. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Really? How charitable." She turned to Amaya. "Julian has always had a soft spot for strays. First his brother, now you." Elizabeth looked shocked. "Vanessa, that's entirely inappropriate." "Is it?" Vanessa asked innocently. "I'm just concerned that Julian might be letting his emotions cloud his judgment. Again." "I think that's enough," Julian said, appearing beside Amaya. His voice was quiet but firm. "Julian," Vanessa smiled as if delighted to see him, "I was just getting to know your friend better." "My friend has a name," Julian said coldly, "and she deserves your respect." Vanessa's smile faltered. "I'm only thinking of you, Julian. After what happened with Tom—" "Don't," Julian cut her off. "Don't you dare use my brother to justify your cruelty." The tension between them was palpable. Amaya touched Julian's arm gently. "It's okay," she said softly. "She's not worth it." Vanessa's eyes narrowed at the familiar gesture. "My goodness," she said. "You're actually falling for her, aren't you?" Julian didn't deny it. Instead, he put his arm around Amaya's waist. "Vanessa, I wish you and James all the happiness in the world. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have other people to talk to." He guided Amaya away, leaving Vanessa staring after them, her composure finally cracking. "I'm sorry about that," Julian said when they were out of earshot. "It's not your fault," Amaya assured him. She's just jealous." "Of what?" Julian asked. "She's the one who left me, remember? But she expected you to pine for her," Amaya said, "to be miserable without her. Instead, you're moving on, with someone she considers beneath her." Julian stopped walking and turned to face Amaya. "You are not beneath anyone," he said fiercely, "least of all Vanessa Mitchell." The intensity in his eyes made Amaya's heart race. "Julian, I meant what I said in my speech," he interrupted. "You inspire me, Amaya. Your strength, your resilience. When I'm with you, I feel like a better version of myself." Amaya didn't know how to respond. Part of her wanted to run from these feelings, to protect herself from the inevitable heartbreak. But another part, a stronger part, wanted to be brave enough to let Julian in. "You scare me," she admitted quietly. "The way you make me feel scares me. Because I've lost everything before and I survived. But if I let myself love you, and then lost you, so you won't lose me," Julian promised. "You can't guarantee that," Amaya pointed out. "No one can." "You're right," Julian conceded. "I can't promise that nothing will ever go wrong, but I can promise that I will never willingly walk away from you, that I will fight for us every day with everything I have." Amaya looked into his eyes and saw the truth there. Julian Barrett, who had built an empire out of nothing, who had survived the loss of his brother and the betrayal of his fiancée, was offering her his heart. "I need time," she said finally, "to be sure that what I'm feeling is real and not just gratitude or dependency." Julian nodded, though she could see with the disappointment in his eyes. "I understand. And I'll wait, for as long as it takes." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Amaya met more people from the foundation, discussed the youth program position with Elizabeth, and even sang a few notes when asked about her voice, just enough to show that she was recovering, not enough to strain her vocal cords. Throughout it all, Julian stayed by her side, proud and supportive, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. As they drove home, Amaya found herself watching Julian's profile in the darkness. He had given her so much, a home, medical care, a chance at a new career. But more than that, he had given her hope. Hope that she could rebuild her life. Hope that she could trust again. Hope that maybe, just maybe, she deserved happiness. "What are you thinking?" Julian asked, catching her gaze. "That I'm lucky to have met you," Amaya said honestly. Julian smiled. "I'm the lucky one." When they arrived back at the estate, Julian walked Amaya to the door of the guest house. "Thank you for tonight," she said. "Despite Vanessa, I had a wonderful time." "So did I," Julian replied. "And don't worry about Vanessa. She can't hurt us unless we let her." Amaya nodded, though she wasn't so sure. Vanessa seemed like the type who didn't give up easily, especially when her pride was wounded. "Good night, Julian," she said softly. "Good night, Amaya," he replied, stepping back respectfully, though she could see in his eyes that he wanted to kiss her. As she closed the door behind her, Amaya leaned against it, her heart pounding. She was falling in love with Julian Barrett. There was no use denying it anymore. The question was, what was she going to do about it? The next morning, Amaya woke up early for her vocal therapy session with Marcus. As she walked up to the main house, she noticed a sleek silver car in the driveway that she didn't recognize. Inside, she heard raised voices coming from Julian's study. Curious and concerned, she moved closer to the partially open door. "This has gone on long enough, Julian," a woman's voice said sharply. Amaya recognized it as Margaret Chen, Julian's PR director. "The board is losing patience." "The board works for me, not the other way around," Julian replied, his voice tight with anger. "But the shareholders don't," another voice, male this time, pointed out. "And they're getting nervous about all this distraction." "Richard, if you're referring to Amaya as a distraction, we're going to have a problem," Julian said coldly. "Call it what you want," Richard replied. "The fact is, your judgment is being questioned. First the Donatian to that homeless shelter, then this music program expansion, and now you're personally housing and treating a woman you barely know." "I know her better than you think," Julian said. "That's what worries us," Margaret cut in. "You're emotionally involved, just like you were with your brother." There was a dangerous silence, Amaya held her breath. "My brother has nothing to do with this," Julian finally said, his voice deathly quiet. "Doesn't he?" Margaret pressed. "You couldn't save Tom, so now you're trying to save her. Get out!" Julian's voice was like ice. "Both of you. Now." "Julian, be reasonable," Richard began. "I said get out!" Julian shouted. Amaya quickly backed away from the door as Margaret and Richard exited the study. They barely glanced at her as they strode past, their faces tight with anger. After they left, Amaya hesitated, then knocked gently on the study door. "What?" Julian snapped, then his tone immediately softened when he saw it was her. "Amaya, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to yell." "Are you okay?" she asked, entering the room. "I heard shouting." Julian ran a hand through his hair. "Just a disagreement with my PR team. Nothing for you to worry about." But Amaya could see the strain in his face. "It was about me, wasn't it?" Julian hesitated, then nodded. "Some people at the company think I'm distracted, making decisions based on emotion rather than business sense." "Because of me," Amaya said quietly. "Because they don't understand," Julian corrected. "They don't see what I see when I look at you." "And what's that?" Amaya asked. Julian's expression softened. "Someone worth fighting for." The simple declaration nearly broke Amaya's heart. No one had fought for her in so long, not since her mother died. "Julian," she began, not sure what she wanted to say. Before she could continue, Julian's phone rang. He glanced at it and frowned. "I have to take this, it's the board chairman." Amaya nodded in understanding. "I should go anyway, Marcus is waiting for me." Julian looked torn but answered the phone. "Charles, what can I do for you?" As Amaya left the study, she heard the beginning of what sounded like another difficult conversation. She walked to her therapy session with a heavy heart, wondering if she was causing more problems for Julian than she realized. That afternoon, Amaya had another milestone in her recovery. Marcus asked her to sing a simple scale, just to test the quality of her voice. "Remember," he cautioned, "this is just an assessment. Don't push it." Amaya nodded, nervous but excited. She hadn't tried to sing at all since the surgery, following Dr. Chen's strict instructions. She took a deep breath, feeling the familiar expansion of her ribcage, the grounding through at her feet that her first voice teacher had taught her so many years ago. Then she sang the first note. It wasn't perfect. Her voice was rougher than it used to be, less flexible. But it was there. The sound came out clear and true, rising through the scale with only a slight wobble on the highest notes. When she finished, Marcus was smiling. "That's very promising," he said. "With continued therapy, I think you'll recover most, if not all, of your range A and control." Tears filled Amaya's eyes. "Really?" "Really," Marcus assured her. "You've done the hard work, Amaya. Now you just need to be patient and keep practicing." Amaya couldn't wait to tell Julian. She hurried back to the main house, but found it empty, except for Mrs. Patel, the housekeeper. "Mr. Barrett had to go to the office for an emergency board meeting," Mrs. Patel explained. "He asked me to tell you he'll be back for dinner." Amaya tried not to worry, but she couldn't help wondering if the emergency meeting had something to do with her, with what Margaret and Richard had said that morning. To distract herself, she went back to the guest house and opened her laptop, a gift from Julian so she could research music education programs and work on her resume. She had an email from Elizabeth Morgan following up about the youth program position and inviting her to submit a formal application. Amaya SP spent the afternoon crafting her application, trying to focus on the future, rather than worrying about Julian and his company problems. By the time evening came, she had a solid draft ready to review. She was just getting ready to head up to the main house for dinner when her phone rang. It was Julian. "I'm sorry," he said as soon as she answered. "I'm still stuck at the office, emergency board session." "Is everything okay?" Amaya asked, concern evident in her voice. There was a pause. "There's been a hostile takeover attempt," Julian finally said. "I need to deal with it." "Oh my God," Amaya gasped. "Julian, I'm so sorry." "It's not your fault," he said quickly. "This has been brewing for months, since before I met you. James Westfield, Vanessa's new husband, has been quietly buying up shares. Vanessa's husband is trying to take over your company. Amaya was shocked. With help from an old rival of mine, Julian confirmed. They've been planning this for a while. That's why Vanessa left me for him. It was all part of their strategy. The pain in his voice broke Amaya's heart. What can I do? She asked. Nothing, Julian sighed. This is my battle to fight. I just wanted you to know why I won't be home tonight. Will you be okay? Amaya asked softly. I will, Julian promised. I've faced worse than James Westfield and still come out on top. After they hung up, Amaya sat in the guest house, feeling helpless. Julian had done so much for her, and now he was fighting for his company alone. She thought about what Margaret had said, that Julian was distracted because of her. Was that true? Had his kindness toward her somehow made him vulnerable to his business rivals? The thought was unbearable. Amaya had lost so much in her life, but she couldn't bear to be the reason Julian lost something too. She paced the Gewesant house, trying to figure out what to do. Eventually, she came to a difficult decision. She would apply for the teaching position with the foundation, as Julian had suggested. But if she got it, she would move out of the guest house, find her own place, pay her own way. It was the only way to prove, to Julian, to his board, to herself, that she wasn't taking advantage of his generosity, that she could stand on her own 2 feet again, even if it meant giving up the chance to see where their feelings for each other might lead. With a heavy heart, Amaya sat down to finish her application. It was the right thing to do, she told herself, for both of them. But as she worked, she couldn't help wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. 3 days passed without Julian returning to the estate. Amaya heard snippets of news from Mrs. Patel and from the business channels on TV. Barrett Tech was fighting. A hostile takeover bid from Westfield Industries, with Julian working around the clock to retain control of the company he'd built from nothing. Amaya continued her vocal therapy with Marcus, who was increasingly pleased with her progress. She submitted her application for the youth program position and received an invitation to interview the following week. Everything was moving forward, but without Julian there, the guest house felt empty and cold. On the 4th day, Amaya was surprised by a visitor, Elizabeth Morgan from the foundation. I hope you don't mind me dropping by, Elizabeth said as they sat in the guest house living room. I was in the area and thought we could talk about your interview next week. Of course, Amaya said, offering Elizabeth tea. I appreciate you taking the time. Elizabeth studied Amaya over the rim of her teacup. You seem worried. Is it about the position? No, Amaya admitted. I'm worried about Julian. This takeover attempt. Elizabeth nodded in understanding. Julian's a fighter. He won't give up his company easily. I know, Amaya sighed, but I can't help feeling partly responsible. His board thinks he's been distracted because of me. His board, Elizabeth said with a slight edge to her voice, has always been short-sighted. They don't understand that Julian's humanity is what makes him successful, not just his business acumen. What do you mean? Amaya asked. Elizabeth set down her cup. Did Julian ever tell you how we met? Amaya shook her head. It was after his brother died, Elizabeth explained. Julian was drowning in guilt and grief. He showed up at one of our fundraisers, wrote a massive check, and then sat alone in the corner, looking lost. Elizabeth's eyes softened at the memory. I went over to thank him, and somehow we ended up talking about Tom, about how music had been his sanctuary during his struggles with depression. Julian mentioned that at the gala, Amaya said softly. What Julian doesn't tell people, Elizabeth continued, is that after Tom died, he spent weeks tracking down every music teacher his brother had ever had. He wanted to understand what music had meant to Tom, what it had given him that Julian himself couldn't. Amaya felt tears prick her eyes. I didn't know that. Julian has always looked for ways to save others since he couldn't save his brother, Elizabeth said. That's why he started the youth music program. That's why he funds mental health initiatives. And yes, maybe that's partly why he helped you. Elizabeth leaned forward, her gaze intense. But that doesn't diminish what's growing between you two. Julian may have been drawn to you initially because you needed help, but he stayed because of who you are. How can you be sure? Amaya asked, voicing her deepest fear. Because I know Julian, Elizabeth said simply. I've seen him with Vanessa, who never really understood his grief or his need to make something meaningful out of Tom's death. And I've seen him with you. Amaya looked down at her hands. I've decided to move out when I get the teaching position, to stand on my own. May I ask why? Elizabeth inquired gently. Because I need to know I can, Amaya replied. And because Julian needs to know that I'm with him by choice, not necessity. Elizabeth studied her thoughtfully. That makes sense, but don't push him away completely. Julian has lost too many people already. Before Amaya could respond, her phone rang. It was Julian. I need to take this, she said apologetically to Elizabeth. Of course, Elizabeth stood. I should be going anyway. We'll talk more at your interview next week. As Elizabeth left, Amaya answered the phone. Julian, are you okay? I'm coming home, he said, his voice tired but relieved. It's over. The takeover attempt? Amaya asked anxiously. Yes, Julian confirmed. We fought them off. For now, at least. That's wonderful, Amaya exclaimed. I've been so worried. I'll tell you all about it when I get there, Julian promised. I've missed you, Amaya. The simple admission made her heart skip. I've missed you too. An hour later, Jay Ulian's car pulled up to the main house. Amaya, who had been watching from the guest house window, hurried outside to meet him. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his normally immaculate suit wrinkled from days of wear. But when he saw Amaya, his face lit up with a smile that made her breath catch. You're a sight for sore eyes, he said, pulling her into a tight hug. Amaya melted into his embrace, realizing how much she'd missed his warmth, his scent, his presence. I was so worried about you. Julian pulled back to look at her. I'm okay, just tired. Come on, Amaya said, taking his hand. You need food and rest. She led him into the main house, where Mrs. Patel had prepared a simple meal. As they sat at the kitchen table, Julian, too tired for the formality of the dining room, he told her what had happened. James and his backers had been quietly buying shares for months, Julian explained between bites of Mrs. Patel's homemade soup. Their plan was to take control at the next shareholders' meeting, then break up the company and sell it off in pieces. So that's terrible, Amaya said, outraged on his behalf. What they didn't count on was the loyalty of our employees, Julian continued with a tired smile. When word got out about the takeover attempt, our staff pooled their resources and bought up enough shares to block the bid. They did that tea for you? Amaya was amazed. For themselves, too, Julian clarified. They believe in what we're building, and they know that James Westfield would destroy it all for a quick profit. So it's really over? Amaya asked. Julian hesitated. For now. We've stabilized the situation, but James and his backers still own a significant portion of the company. They'll try again. What will you do? Fight, Julian said simply. It's what I do. He reached across the table and took her hand. But right now, I just want to enjoy being home. With you. Amaya squeezed his hand, but her heart was heavy with the decision she'd made. Julian, there's something I need to tell you. He must have heard the seriousness in her voice, because his smile faded. What is it? I applied for the teaching position with the foundation, Amaya began. Elizabeth came by today to discuss my interview next week. That's great news, Julian said, though his eyes were cautious, sensing there was more. If I get the position, Amaya continued, I'm going to move out, find my own place. Julian's expression fell. Why? Because I need to stand on my own, Amaya explained gently. I need to know that I can. I never doubted that you could, Julian said. But why now? With everything that's happening. That's exactly why, Amaya interrupted. Your board, your investors, they think I'm a distraction, that I'm taking advantage of you. I don't care what they think, Julian said fiercely. But you should, Amaya insisted. They're right that you've been distracted. You've spent so much time helping me when you should have been focused on your company. That's not true, Julian protested. The takeover attempt was in motion long before I met you. Maybe, Amaya conceded, but my presence hasn't helped, and I can't be the reason you lose something you've worked so hard to build. Julian stood up abruptly and paced the kitchen, So that's it? You're just going to leave? I'm not leaving you, Amaya said softly. I'm just standing on my own 2 feet. Isn't that what you wanted for me? Julian stopped pacing and looked at her, his expression pained. Yes, he admitted. Of course that's what I want for you. I just didn't think it would mean losing you. You're not losing me, Amaya assured him, standing to face him. But if there's going to be something between us, something real, it has to be between equals, not between a rescuer and someone who needs rescuing. Julian was quiet for a long moment, processing her words. Finally, he nodded. You're right, he said softly. I'll miss having you here. Amaya stepped closer, placing her hand on his cheek. I'll miss being here, but this is the right thing to do. For both of us. Julian covered her hand with his own. Promise me something? What? That this isn't goodbye, he said, his voice vulnerable in a way she'd never heard before. That we'll still see each other, still, explore whatever this is between us. I promise, Amaya said softly. This isn't goodbye, Julian, not even close. The relief in his eyes was palpable. He pulled her into another hug, holding her as if he never wanted to let go. And for a moment, despite her determination to be independent, Amaya wished he never would. The next week flew by in a blur of preparations. Amaya had her interview with the foundation, which went exceptionally well. Elizabeth called the next day to offer her the position, which would start in 2 weeks. With Julian's reluctant help, Amaya found a small but comfortable apartment not far from the music center where she would be teaching. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean and safe and, most importantly, hers. The night before she was set to move out, Julian invited her to dinner at his house, not in the formal dining room, but on the terrace overlooking the ocean, where they had spent so many evenings talking and getting to know each other. Mrs. Patel had outdone herself with the meal, preparing all of Amaya's favorites. As they ate, watched the sunset, and talked about Amaya's new job, there was a bitter sweetness to the evening that neither of them acknowledged. After dinner, as they sat side by side looking at the stars, Julian finally broke the silence. I have something for you, he said, reaching into his pocket, into his D. Julian? Amaya began, worried it would be some extravagant gift she couldn't accept. You know I can't. It's not what you think, Julian interrupted with a small smile. He pulled out a simple box and handed it to her. Amaya opened it cautiously. Inside was a key on a plain silver keychain. It's a key to the house, Julian explained, so you can come back anytime you want, for dinner or just to talk or whatever. Amaya felt tears spring to her eyes. Julian, this is your home too, he said softly, even if you don't live here anymore. Thank you, Amaya whispered, deeply touched by the gesture. It wasn't an extravagant gift or an attempt to keep her dependent on him. It was simply an open door, an invitation to return on her own terms. They sat in comfortable silence for a while longer until Julian spoke again, his voice hesitant. There's something else I want to give you, but I'm afraid you'll misunderstand. Amaya looked at him curiously. What is it? Julian reached into his pocket again and pulled out another small box. This one was older, worn around the edges. This belonged to my mother, he said, opening the box to reveal a simple ring with a small, modest stone. It's not expensive or flashy. She was a teacher, like you're going to be. My father gave it to her when they were just starting out, before he had any money. Amaya's heart pounded as she looked at the ring. Julian, I'm not proposing, he quickly clarified. At least, not in the traditional sense. I know we're not ready for that, but I want you to have this. Why? Amaya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Julian looked into her eyes. Because from the moment I saw you in that cafe, something changed in me, something I thought was broken forever, has started to heal. He took the ring from the box, but didn't try to put it on her finger. This isn't about saving you, he said, echoing the words from the story premise. It's about deserving you. He placed the ring in her palm and closed her fingers around it. Keep it, he said. Not as a promise or an obligation. Just as a reminder that no matter where you go or what you do, there's someone who believes in you, someone who sees you, really sees you, and Hinks, you're extraordinary. Tears slipped down Amaya's cheeks. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Julian assured her. Just know that whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here. Amaya looked down at the ring in her hand, then back at Julian. In his eyes, she saw not pity or the desire to rescue her, but genuine love and respect. In that moment, she made her decision. She took Julian's hand and placed the ring in Hayes' palm. His face fell, thinking she was refusing his gift. But then Amaya held out her left hand. I want you to put it on, she said softly. Not as an engagement, not yet, but as a promise that we'll see where this leads. Together. Julian's eyes widened. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything, Amaya said. I'm still moving out tomorrow. I'm still going to stand on my own, but I don't want to do it alone. I want you beside me, Julian, not as my savior or my benefactor, as my partner. Julian's face broke into a smile so full of joy that it took Amaya's breath away. With slightly trembling hands, he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Partners, Julian agreed, his voice thick with emotion. Under the stars, with the sound of the ocean below them, they sealed their promise with a kiss, their first. It was gentle and sweet, full of hope and possibility. When they pulled apart, Julian rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Amaya Lewis, he whispered. I think I have since that first day in the cafe. I love you too, Amaya replied, the words coming easily, naturally, even when I tried not to. Julian laughed softly. We've come a long way from just for one night, haven't we? A very long way, Amaya agreed with a smile. 6 months later, Amaya stood backstage at the Communi Thai Center, nervously adjusting her simple black dress. It was her first public performance since her surgery, not as a soloist, but alongside her students from the youth music program. Through the curtain, she could hear the excited murmur of the audience gathering for the Foundation's annual showcase. Her students, children and teenagers from underprivileged backgrounds, were just as nervous as she was, fidgeting with their instruments and sheet music. You're all going to be amazing, Amaya assured them, her voice strong and clear. The months of therapy had paid off. While her voice wasn't exactly the same as before, it had a new depth and richness that she had come to appreciate. Ms. Lewis, one of her youngest students, tugged at her dress. My mom couldn't come. She had to work. Amaya knelt down to the little girl's level. That's okay, Sophie. I'll be right there in the front row when I'm not on stage W with you, and Mr. Barrett will be recording everything so your mum can watch it later. Sophie's face brightened. Promise? Promise, Amaya said, giving her a quick hug. As the children took their places, Amaya peeked through the curtain. The auditorium was full, with Elizabeth Morgan and other Foundation board members in the front row. And there, right beside them, sat Julian, looking handsome in a suit but deliberately understated, not wanting to draw tension from the children. Amaya touched the ring on her finger, still a promise, not yet an engagement, though they both knew it was just a matter of time. Julian had been true to his word, giving her space to establish her independence while remaining steadfastly by her side. She had kept her word too. While she lived in her own apartment and paid her own bills with her teacher's salary, she spent most weekends at Julian's house. They were taking things slow, building a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine love, rather than dependency or gratitude. It hadn't all been smooth sailing. Julian's company was still fending off takeover attempts from James Westfield and his backers. The business papers still occasionally ran stories speculating about Julian's relationship with the former homeless woman. And Amaya still had moments of insecurity, of wondering if she truly belonged in Julian's world. But through it all, they had each other, partners, just as they'd promised. The lights dimmed, signaling the start of the performance. Elizabeth stepped onto the stage to welcome the audience and introduce the program. Before we begin, Elizabeth said, I want to recognize someone special. 6 months ago, Amaya Lewis joined our foundation with a unique perspective and an extraordinary gift. She has transformed our youth program, reaching children who without music wasn't for people like them. Tonight she'll perform with her students for the first time since recovering from a serious vocal injury. Please welcome Amaya Lewis and the New Voices Choir. The curtain rose, revealing Amaya and her students, 20 children of various ages, from diverse backgrounds, all bearing the same nervous but excited expressions. Amaya stepped forward to the microphone. Thank you all for coming tonight. Before we begin, I want to share something with you. A year ago, I was homeless, voiceless, and hopeless. I had lost everything that mattered to me. She paused, her eyes finding Julian's in the audience. He nodded encouragingly. But then, something extraordinary happened, Amaya continued. Someone saw me, really saw me, when I was invisible to the rest of the world. That one act of kindness changed everything. She gestured to her students. These amazing young people understand what it's like to feel invisible, to believe that their voices don't matter. Tonight they're going to show you just how wrong that is. Amaya turned to the children and raised her hands. They stood taller, their focus sharpening as she had taught them. And then together, they began to sing. The song was simple but powerful, a piece Amaya had composed specifically for her students, with solos for the strongest singers and parts simple enough for the beginners to master. The lyrics spoke of resilience, of finding light in darkness, of voices joining together to create something beautiful. Amaya's voice, though changed, blended perfectly with the children's, supporting without overpowering, guiding without controlling. As she sang, she watched her students' faces transform with the joy and pride of making music together. In the audience, Julian watched with tears in his eyes. This was what had drawn him to Amaya from the beginning, not just her beauty or her strength, but her capacity for joy, even after everything she had lost. Now, seeing her share that joy with these children, he loved her more than ever. When the song ended, the audience erupted in applause. The children beamed with pride, some of them jumping up and down in excitement. Amaya stepped back, letting her students take their well-deserved bows. As the applause continued, Julian made his ways. High to the edge of the stage, Amaya spotted him and came over, still glowing from the performance. That was incredible, Julian said, taking her hand. You're incredible. We did good, didn't we? Amaya said, looking back at her students. You did amazing, Julian confirmed. Tom would have loved this. Amaya squeezed his hand, knowing how much it meant that he could speak of his brother with more joy than pain now. I have something to ask you, Julian said, his expression suddenly serious. What is it? Amaya asked. Julian glanced around at the crowded auditorium. Not here, later. Amaya raised an eyebrow. Is this what I think it is? Julian smiled mysteriously. Maybe. You'll have to wait and see. Amaya laughed, feeling lighter and happier than she had in years. Whatever question Julian had to ask her, she already knew her answer would be yes. Because what had started as just for one night had become the rest of their lives, and she wouldn't have it any other way. As she returned to the stage for the next performance, Amaya caught a glimpse of her reflection in the polished surface of the piano. She barely recognized the confident, glowing woman she saw there. But Julian had seen her all along. Even when she was at her lowest, he had seen the woman she could become. Not because he wanted to save her, but because he believed she could save herself. And in the end, that had made all the difference.